All right, man, peace. So, brothers, about a month or so ago, I did a video on a young so-called black female by the name of Brandy Odom, who was found horrifically murdered and dismembered in a park in Canarsie, Brooklyn. I believe the name of the video was Death in Brooklyn, and I covered the video from the standpoint of trying to give brothers a little bit of perspective on what type of female they should be associating with, and to try to avoid many of these young females who want to immerse themselves in the quote-unquote fast lane. Because in the same way that if you're a young so-called black man and you immerse yourself in the fast lane, you end up dead or in jail, so does the young black female. Many of them want to run the streets. They want to go to every party. Next thing you know, they're caught up in being a prostitute or some other form of depravity. And it always ends up the same way. And I was not saying that necessarily that's what she got caught up in, but oftentimes when people are found murdered, dismembered, that's what happened, especially when it comes to many of the young black females from certain areas, from certain neighborhoods. Now, there were a slew of brothers who came into my comments and stated that she had a history of being a prostitute, so on and so forth. How true that is, I'm not sure. I didn't find that myself, so maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Point being is this: always be aware of the type of people that you're around. Just because you're from a bad area does not mean that you have to be a bad person. Understand the power that you have in your own decision making. That's why it's best, if you come from a certain area, a certain neighborhood, sometimes you have to be a loner so that you can avoid a lot of the dumb shit. The bigger the crowd, the dumber the crowd. But anyway, CBS Nightly News, they have provided an update to the story, so let's see what they have to say.
New developments tonight in the investigation into the murder and dismemberment of a young woman from Queens. Her body parts found scattered in a park. Tonight, 2 of her roommates are being questioned by police. CBS 2's Rena Roy is live in Rosedale, where the woman lived. Rena.
Well, Jessica, as you can see behind us here, the NYPD is standing guard, and they have been outside this home all day. This is where sources say 26-year-old Brandy Odom lived with her 2 roommates, and they, as you said, are being questioned by police at this hour after those sources tell us a cadaver dog picked up her scent in the trunk of one of their cars.
Well, it's very obvious that one of her roommates, or both, but at least one, was involved in her murder and dismemberment. For the cadaver dog to pick up the scent of her rotting corpse in the trunk of one of her roommates' vehicles. It is what it is. It's not that difficult to figure out. Now it's just a matter of trying to discern what the motive could have been. Once again, brothers, and let me say this: if you find yourself living in an abode with a female and you see that things are getting untenable, she's always trying to cause strife, she's very cantankerous, belligerent, always trying to go to war with you, God forbid she starts to put her hands on you, extricate yourself from that situation immediately, because things are only going to get worse. As a matter of fact, if you see that it's her modus operandi to try to emasculate you, to denigrate you, call you a homosexual, a faggot, a this, a that, things that many modern day liberal females do to provoke a man, extricate yourself immediately. And that's a last ditch option. Because if you have been on point and you've done your due diligence, you should already know what type of female you're living with. Once again, that's why I have that series, Know Who You're Living With. I'm an advocate of the so-called black man living by himself for a certain period of time until he's ready. You have to do things when you're ready. And if you're a brother that's grown and you have a daughter and she decides that she wants to go off on her own and she's living with roommates, you got to make sure you know who them roommates are, man. But a lot of these females, they're so out of control. They want to do whatever the fuck they want to do. They end up getting caught up in situations that they can't get out of. Next thing they know, they're getting killed and damn chopped up.
This quiet home on 148th Road in Rosedale, Queens, now at the center of a homicide investigation. Sources confirm 26-year-old Brandy Odom lived there with 2 roommates, a woman and a man now being questioned in her murder.
When I woke up this morning, I saw the police tape, so I was kind of wondering, what happens, because it's really a quiet neighborhood.
The fact that you see 4 squad cars parked up in your neighborhood is it's lead for alarming. You would never think that a neighborhood like this will have such type of any type of violence.
People always say that shit. I would never have expected it here. So what, you think that everybody there is an angel? People are always capable of wickedness. Sometimes it's because they are wicked. Sometimes it's because they get pushed and provoked and prodded. And they cannot control themselves. They feel like they have no other option. That's why I always state, man, when you deal with people, always deal with them with a certain level of respect. Especially when you're dealing with them in person. You never know what somebody's going through in their life. And unfortunately, people think that it's cool to troll. They think that it's cool to try to provoke, prod, push. And then you get that reaction you think you want. And it might be the last reaction that you ever receive in your life. I'm not saying that that's what happened with Miss Brandy Odom. I don't know what type of person she was. But I do know this. She was certainly in the wrong place. She was in the wrong place if her intention was to continue her life. Very unfortunate what happened to her. Point being is this for brothers, because my channel once again is geared towards the so-called black man. If you're in a living situation with a female who you feel like is pushing you to that point, just remove yourself from that environment. But first off, always analyze the woman and analyze yourself to try to figure out if you're ready to live with someone. Because a lot of people are not ready. And that roommate spirit, man, that roommate stuff, I mean, really, unless you're desperate, try to be able to live by yourself until you can actually live with someone that you have an attachment to. Because it's just strange to me, especially for a grown man, to be living with roommates. I mean, that tells me right there that a grown man was living with two females that were his roommates. Or maybe the other female, other than Brandy Odom, was his partner or his wife or his girlfriend or whatever. Or maybe he was pimping them both. Who the hell knows? Maybe he was pimping them both and said, you know what? This bitch is getting on my last nerve. You never know what the hell's going on in some of these houses.
Investigators perhaps one step closer to solving this gruesome case. They've been scouring the city for clues the past 3 weeks after police say a woman walking her dog in Brooklyn's Canarsie Park stumbled upon parts of Odom's naked body, her dismembered arms and legs scattered, her face bruised and swollen. This neighbor, who didn't want to show her face on camera out of fear, tells us in Spanish she often heard a man's screams coming from next door.
Now, you see that? The other two neighbors tried to act as if they lived in the best neighborhood in the world, but now this neighbor here says that she often heard screams coming from next door. So it's very clear that there was an element of antipathy in the household of Miss Brandy Odom that the neighbor was accustomed to because she often heard screaming. Now, why would you, as a young female, Miss Brandy Odom, be living in an environment as a roommate with people that you are oftentimes going back and forth with a level of rancor, unless maybe she felt like she could not go anywhere else? This is why I say this all the time, man. Before you have a child, you have to have a plan for your child, because this is a fucked up world that we live in, man. Your child end up in any type of situation, and I'm not trying to absolve Miss Brandy Odom. I don't know what the exact circumstances were for what went down there, but I try to cover issues from every angle, especially for brothers who oftentimes are not shown how to analyze things from a three-dimensional perspective. Our people normally address things from their emotions, and that's why they keep getting caught up in the same things over and over and over and over and over again. The so-called black man has not been trained on how to be a solution-based thinker, because oftentimes he's being raised by his mother, so he thinks like his mother. Steve Harvey wrote this book, Think Like a Man. I don't know how you can write a book called Think Like a Man when so many so-called black men are being raised to think like a woman. So really you're writing a book on thinking like a man who thinks like a woman.
Police have not confirmed any prior incidents at the location, but she tells us she's seen cops there before.
Certain brothers do. You also have a lot of sharp-minded, acute-thinking brothers who understand how to evaluate things from a three-dimensional perspective as well. So let me specify the liberal black man, because he's being raised by the liberal black woman. The liberal black man, he thinks like a damn chick.
Before, then noticed Odom hadn't been around recently. Odom's family is still trying to wrap their heads around their loss. Loved ones in tears a few days ago as they laid her to rest.
My daughter was a loving child. She was sweet. She didn't have any enemies.
That you know of. Your daughter didn't have any enemies that you know of. Believe me, the people in your inner circle, they have Some of them have damn hundreds of phone numbers in their phone. You think every person that's in their phone is a good person? You think that every person that your daughter or your son or your brother or your friend comes in contact with is going to like them? Sometimes people's spirits, they just don't mesh. And things go left from there. I doubt if this female here, the mother of Miss Brandy Odom, if she even understands fully what her daughter was into. Hopefully I'm wrong about that, but I doubt it.
Brandy was a smart, educated, spunky, ambitious young lady.
Now let's translate that. This brother here said that she was smart, ambitious, spunky. Spunky means she had a funky attitude. That's all that means. When you hear the liberal black man use terms like spunky and sassy, what that really means is that he's been raised to accept the liberal black woman's tirades, her mental fragility, and her nasty attitude. So he has to give it a glamorous term, because he himself is not aware of how he's supposed to be treated and how he's supposed to be spoken to. So that right there is him acknowledging that sometimes she can get into it with people.
What happened to her is very terrible.
Well, what happened to her is unfortunate. It was terrible for her. It's very unfortunate. But oftentimes, brothers, and I'm not trying to sound harsh, but your actions, your mindset, your views, your perspectives can precipitate your future. If you're someone who thinks that you can't be touched, if you're someone who feels like you can speak to people however you want, you can treat them however you want, sometimes you can be the recipient of extremely harsh judgment from above.
And sources tell us those two roommates have not yet been charged, but they are not being released by police. We're live in Rosedale, Queens tonight. Rena Roy, CBS 2 News.
Well, here's the issue that I'm having with that. Supposedly the cops are not charging Brandy Odom's former roommates with anything, at least not as of yet. But once again, the cadaver dog was able to trace her scent to the trunk of one of their vehicles. So it's very clear that there is a correlation between her murder and her roommates. I believe that maybe they're just trying to discern and decipher what the motive could have been or what the extent of their relationship was. But I have little doubt that it was one of or both of the roommates, or maybe a third person or a fourth person who came into the home that dealt with her in some way. But I'm sure that we're going to learn about what the exact circumstances were of Miss Brandy Odom's demise somewhere down the line. Point being is this, brothers, try to control your temper when you're dealing with the woman. You have to understand exactly what the issues are that the female that you're dealing with have. And you really shouldn't be living with a woman unless it's a woman in your family and you're a young man, or you're a grown man and you're living with a woman that happens to be your significant other, or your significant others, plural, because yes, a man can have more than one woman. Doesn't mean that he should necessarily, depending on his mindset, but he can. There's nothing wrong with that. Point being is this: try to avoid dumb shit, because it's not worth it, and you are going to get caught for what you do. But anyway, peace.